Good morning, Young Kings. Time for your more motivation this morning. Um, Another lesson for me. I think these are becoming beneficial. As you know, I'm not running right now because I'm injured with a strained hamstring and strained calf, just kind of wobbling, wounded right now. But wanted to continue on this flourishing while frustrated series. Not sure what direction this is going to take because it's been an interesting few days for me. Um, I know the last video I just talked about being still, and want to kind of give you an update on this being still stuff, and come to report that it's been going. I mean, it's been really working. Well, let me be truthful. It's been working on my nerve because I don't know how to be still, and it's like I keep trying to assist God, and God doesn't really want my help and encouraging me not to help him and reminding me um, that he's God all by himself. So this being still, this thing is it's hard, it's difficult. I mean, I feel like I should be doing more, and I guess I should be doing more of listening and less of trying to do. This being still is it's a challenge. And I guess it may be a while. So there's a good and bad thing about that. I mean, there's a good thing because I think there's going to be a lot of nuggets and stuff that you get and gather from my hard headedness and my inability to be still for long periods of time. So that may be good news for the people watching these videos. But the bad news is that I still got to walk through this and experience these things. So there's a few things that I want to get into today in regards to this being still part two. I said I don't need your help. Be still. Um, so I don't know how to begin. So let's just jump into it. There's this church um, that needed a pastor. So they went out and they started searching for a pastor, and they came across this individual that was so eloquent in the word. They thought, look, this is the guy that needs to lead our congregation. I believe he has a word from the Lord to lead us. So they approached him after the service, and they went up to him and asked him, hey, we got a vacancy. Um, would you mind being our pastor? And, the guy looked at him and said, hey, if I'm your pastor, I got to tell you what thus says the Lord. So they said, yeah, we heard you speak, and we think that you have a word for our church, and we want you to come pastor our church. So they make the arrangements, and he comes over a few weeks later to be the pastor of the church. And the first part of that was that he gave his first lesson. That's my backup alarm. You can hear that going on. But he gave his first lesson, and it was amazing. And the congregation was like you know, thanking the Lord that He has brought the right man of God to his life, and that they were going to be continued to be blessed by that. And the congregation left, and they thought, "Wow, we really got this right." So then week two comes by, and then on week two, he preaches the exact same message, and the congregation was like, "Okay," and it was a good message, but it sounded like he did the same thing last week. So, with that being stated, he was like, okay, we won't say anything to him, but, you know, we'll wait until see what he says next week. So then on the third week comes up and he preaches the exact same message. And it was like, all right, maybe this is a one trick pony. Maybe he only had a handful of messages and he just keep telling us the same thing over and over again. What's going on? So a few of the deacons and people get together and they start to talk to him. They say, get this committee. We need to talk to him like, hey, it's time for us to progress. We can't be sitting here going through the same message over and over again. It's time for us to progress. So they said, all right, he done the same message 3 times in a row. We're going to give him next week. And if he says the same message again, then we're going to go have a talk with him. So lo and behold, the 4th time comes and gets up there and he preaches the same message. And now everybody in the church is like frustrated. So the deacons and the elders, they gather after the church and they approach the pastor and he was like, hey, we notice that the message you give us is seeming like it's the exact same message week after week. And we want to know, like, what is the real meaning behind this? Are you a fraud? Are you here playing with us, or what are you trying to do? And they're like, hey, if you don't have anything else for us, then we need to move on and progress and find a pastor that's going to speak to us. And the pastor kind of looked back at him. He says, when I took this job, I told you I have to tell you what thus says the Lord. And the Lord has told me, like, we cannot move on until you start applying some of the stuff that I'm teaching you now. And that's kind of where I'm at in my life. I feel like God is saying, hey, we're going to park here in this being still. Like, we don't move past this right now. Like, you have to learn this, and it's essential that you learn it before we able to move on to different areas. So in that area being still, it comes apart. Like, for me, it's extremely difficult. And there's a few stories that I have on my inability to be still, or just me walking while wounded. But this series we've been on, we're not off track. I think we're right on track. Um, it's called Flourishing While Frustrated. And those two words are contradictions in themselves. One means to thrive, it means to grow, it means um, to have a rapid advancement and development going on, and that is flourishing. You know, and then the frustrating part is like it's like a feeling or expressing of distress, and it talks about the inability to be able to impact change. Like, it's frustrating because you want something different and you lack what it takes to make it different, to change your environment. So it's like in one area, it seems like you're excelling and you're doing this. And then the other area, it feels like you're frustrated. And I noticed that just looking and being transparent with myself, is like I have lived this contradiction. I've been flourishing in one area and I've been frustrated in another. But just as I just said that, I recognize that the things that I'm flourishing in, um, I feel like I've earned it, like I worked for it. Like, I want to take credit for the things that I'm flourishing in, but the things that I'm frustrated in, it feels like it's outside of my control, and I want to blame. I want it to go away, and I realized, like, this morning when I woke up, it's like I realized I'm frustrated with God, like God, change this, like, if you God, why am I experiencing this? And um, to be transparent, I had a blow up moment with God yesterday, and I know for those who may be really saved and sanctified and more holier than Christ Himself, who walk in works, may say this blasphemous, but for me, I yelled. I won't repeat because that was a private conversation between me and God, but I had it out. With this situation I'm in my life and everything that's going on, um, it was just like I broke down in tears and I just was yelling at God, like, and the answer came, through a stillness, and God didn't yell at me. I'm so glad that God is patient with me during this process, because my emotions and stuff is all over the map. But um, so the frustrated part is like, man, it's like it's outside of my control. I feel like I shouldn't be held accountable for that, even though the stuff that I'm doing is a result of some of my own sins and mistakes and that I have done that got me in this frustrated state. So I will ask you this, like, the thing that you're struggling with is different than the thing I'm struggling with, but it's not new to you. Like, this thing where you're frustrated in, or that you can't change, it's not new. It's to a point where it's been there before. Like, for those who struggle with relationships. This is not the first relationship you struggle with. I mean, you've struggled in other ones now. Unfortunately, for me, mine's just the same because I've been with this woman 26, 27, almost 28 years. So, but it's not the first thing, it's not the first time you struggle with that. For those who struggle with obesity, um, it's not the first time you've been overweight. You know, you've been overweight for a long time. You have failed to eat properly or to exercise, you know, in abundance more than you eat. So those who struggle with alcohol, um, it may be a new bottle, but it's the same old wine. It's you've been drinking a long time. You know, those who struggle with just whatever you're struggling with, it is not new. It's something that is familiar to you. It may be a new stimulus. Those who struggle with anger or have temper problems, um, it may be something else that triggered it, but you've been struggling with that anger for a while. You know, every time something comes up, you blow up. It may be something different, but um, a lot of people say, I don't yell. I just talk loud. You know, at least that's what I convince myself. But the reality of it is, whatever it is you're struggling with, it's not new. It's something that you're going to have to get it rooted up at the, chop it down at the root. Because if you just tear off a branch of it, then it's going to continue to grow, and you're going to reap the benefits, or um, reap some of the harms from that growing like that. So flourishing while frustrated is a contradiction, and the thing behind this here is just how do you flourish while frustrated. And there is that serenity prayer. You know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change and the courage to change the things that I can, and the knowledge and wisdom to know the difference. Like the things you can change, you need to have that personal courage and start that pursuit to change. And the things that's outside of your ability to change, then you got to accept that. You can't be God. And I was talking to an individual many years back, and I think I started to say this on the other video, but I got distracted and I never came back to it. Um, but I was talking to an individual about a relationship with God, and how we use God as like this spiritual ATM. Like we get to a point where we think God is supposed to answer us, and that's an arrogant state. And that's where I was yesterday when I was yelling at God. I wanted the answer. I needed to know what was going on. And the ability of it is like, I told this individual, and this is the thing about having God speak to me in these various different ways, is that you eventually got to walk this stuff out. And you're not immune to it. You can't just say it and then not be accountable for it. But I told this individual, I said, if God was to respond to you when you want, how you want, at your direction, who's really God? Like if God is waiting for you to give him direction, then we in our minds are making God our servant. Instead of being a servant of the Most High, we're trying to make the Most High our servant, and to him to manipulate situations and stuff that would benefit us. So there's an element that's going on, like where God is saying, look, I am God. It's time for you to be, obedient to me, and not me be obedient to you. Like I'm not subjected to your feelings. I'm not subjected to your emotions. I'm not subjected to your conditions of what's going on. I'm outside of that. I'm here to help you, but don't try to, manage my activities on what you think I should and should not do. That was a lesson for me. And it's probably a lesson for you, because I think if you're frustrated, if you get down to the root cause of that, there's a victim mentality where you want to blame God for some things that you didn't jacked up, or you want to blame other people. But in order to flourish where you're frustrated, you might have to have that serenity that goes forward. So as you navigate through these things, it won't always be fast. Some things are going to take a long time. So with that being stated, we already have 15 minutes. I thought that if I didn't run, that these things would be shorter, But who knows? Now that I have technology, I got my Bible, I got different stuff here. I might be in for a long time. But listen, continue listen on. But the story is like yesterday I had to go take a car to a shop. My truck was in the shop and I was waiting on this individual. I won't call Cliff name out like that. But anyways, I was waiting on this individual to come give me a ride to the shop so I can take my truck there. But so long story short, he comes over and then he says, "Hey man, I'm right back, but we can be done, and I we can get there by 5." And I said, "Man, you're not gonna be back by 5 to do this." He said, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna be back." Long story short, he didn't come back. So when it started to get around 3, I decided just to go myself. And my truck is at one shop, and they did a few things on it, but they said there's something going on with the transmission, so I needed to take it to a different shop. So that's why I wanted him to come with me. He said he was going to diagnose it or whatever. Anyways, he didn't show up, so I ended up having to go myself. So I get up there, and they said, "Well, it will drive a little. It's shifting rough, and we're not sure. You need to take it to another transmission shop." So I go and pay for the stuff they doing. But while I was going up, I seen another shop that has a transmission shop that was right up the road. So after I pay them, I go down to this other shop and I asked them, will they look at my vehicle? And they said, is it out there? I said, no, I just want to know kind of a guesstimate. And they said, well, you know how shops do. Bring it in and we'll see what's what. So now I'm figuring that this shop is only like, man, it's not even quite a mile. It's over a half a mile, but it's probably like three-fourths, just over three-fourths of a mile away. And I'm thinking, all right, I'll go down there. I'll leave my car here at this shop. I'll walk down to my car at the other shop, and then I'll just drive it down here slowly and have them look at it. But as I mentioned, I just pulled my hamstring and my calf, and it's to a point where it's like I've been running up to 13 and a half miles, 7 to 8 miles, 9, 10 miles every other day for the last month and a half, 2 months. Before then I was just doing 2 or 3 miles. But then the last two months or so, I've been pushing like 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles every other day. And then I'll peak out. I peaked out at 13 miles all at one time. So I'm thinking, it's not that far. I should be able to just go up there and come right back. And I realized I'm wounded. Like that three-fourths of a mile, I've ran more than 3 miles faster than I was able to walk. that less than a mile down there. And the thing about it is like that walk was painful. Like I'm wobbling, and it's like I had to cross a road, and that's like I had to try to limp across the road because a car was coming. And the whole aspect of just walking was painful, like every step. And I'm looking like, how is this possible? Like just a week ago, you were running 8, 10 miles, and all of a sudden, you're struggling to walk, less than a mile to get a truck to drive down. So it took me a while. It took me about, I want to say at least 30, 35, 40 minutes to walk that distance because every step, I mean, I couldn't get a stride on, so I'm wobbling, walking down there with a strained calf and a strained hamstring, and getting to a point like, what's what? So it became very challenging for me to do that. So the thing about this is like I realized like every step is painful for me. Like I need to get to a point where I understand that like I don't have the same ability that I had before. Although I desired to be running and get there faster than what I am, it comes a point where I need to slow down, and it's asking me to be still, to recognize that every step is going to be a little challenge now. So the season I'm in is not to a point where I'm able to get exactly what I want out of the situation, and it comes to a point where I need to recognize and understand like every step is different, and it may be a little slower. So, and the same thing with you, the thing you're struggling with to get out with, there's some things that it won't be accelerated. There's some things that it's going to take time in order for you to get there. And it can lead to a frustration. So, what do you do during those times? Um, you got to be still. You got to be still. And it becomes harder and harder to do this, extremely hard. When you think you should be further ahead in what you really are, reality sets in that you still are in the midst of struggling with some things. You're still there. So how do you translate that to still flourish while frustrated? Um, it's going to be hard. And for me to sit here and try to tell you anything different, I would be deceiving you. Because if I tell you that it's supposed to be easy and then you go to experience the difficulty of it, you would think like, hey, maybe I'm doing something wrong. But the reality of it is that you're doing it right when you're experiencing that difficulty. So Psalms 46, is still there, and we'll go through it briefly, but the bottom line is like God is still saying, be still. And in that stillness, I find myself reneging on some things. Like I was supposed to come off social media and I had came off there. But then I found myself back on there, and thinking, well, it's innocent. I'm not really posting. I'm not really doing anything. But at the same time, there wasn't innocence on there. I mean, I'm not saying those who are on social media that you're supposed to abandon it, but I know for this season I was supposed to be off there. And I had deleted apps. And then next thing you know, during a time of being bored and lonely, I find myself downloading them again and then being up on there. And so I had to go back and re-delete them again, and even in my justification on some of it was, I mean, when I look at it, it's just it's not right. Like I need to really be quiet and be still. And part of that being still is managing myself when I'm bored. Like it, when you're having a great time, you really don't need to manage, your emotions and stuff. But, they say an idle mind is a devil's workshop or whatever. It's that time of boredom, that time of quietness that your mind starts raging and it starts rambling more and more. And it's like, what do you do when you're extremely bored? And most people get into destructive patterns, you know. So how do you manage that boredom? And that's something that I have to learn during this process. There'll be times where I'm just sitting here at home and not to brag, but I live in a pretty large house. I think it's over 4,000 square feet and it's just me here. Um, but it feels like a big prison at times. Like it feels so empty. Like what do I do? It's like, so managing myself while there's inactivity where there's nothing to do, and I don't want to just sit at home and watch TV, but at the same time, like I need to start being productive in my boredom and not default to destructive or going to social media, getting distracted by various different things or signs. So um, getting back into the scripture after I did that little rant, and we're about to wrap up because it's coming on 25 minutes already. We talked about God being a refuge in a time of present and trouble, and that although the mountains they're maybe slipping into the seas, so what was high will be brought low. And it says, though the mountains quake in swelling pride, there is a river whose stream make glad the city of the Lord, the city of God. And it says, the holy dwelling place of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. So all this stuff is happening, there's mountains that's going down into the valley. The earth is quaking and shaking. And God is saying that she will not be moved. And that verse was, really live in my life, like over this in the last few days, meaning that God is telling me to be still. Like the stuff is happening around me, and this God is saying, be still. And it says, she will not be moved. So it's not only saying that, it is saying that God is her protection and refuge, and saying that that stuff that's happening around her won't harm her. It's not going to destroy her or destroy the things that's going on in your life. It's not there to destroy you. But that is the essential thing, what it's saying, that God is protecting you in the midst of everything that's going on. But what it's also saying is that his protection is not moving you out of the situation either. He's not putting you in an environment where that stuff, you can't see that stuff and you're not visibly shaken or moved by those things. He's just saying she will not be moved. And he's saying he's not moving her, and neither are you, or those situations and circumstances. So there's an element of your life where you're going to be sitting in some stuff, and things are going to be happening on the left, things are going to be happening on the right, and you can't be moved. It says she will not be moved. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when the morning dawns. And we glossed over that last time. It's like, help her in the morning dawn. But what does she do in the night? And a lot of us are in night situations. And it's being still. And it says the nations made an uproar. The kingdoms tottered. And, that word tottered, I was like, man, my vocabulary is growing, but I had to look it up. And it was more about being unstable, being uneasy. So the kingdoms around are like unstable and it's fragile, it's tottering. And kind of like me walking from that shop down that mile. I mean, I was unstable. I was just tottering down there, if you could, just moving slowly, unsteadily. So the kingdoms around there is tottered. And they say he raised his voice and the earth melted, and the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. And then it says, come behold the works of the Lord. Like what you're going through is for God, for you to behold the works of the Lord. So people will see you and you coming up on the other side, they're going to have to know that it was God that brought you out. It won't be anything you done. It won't be anything you earned. It's going to be God that brought you out. And then it gets down and says, verse 10, cease from striving and know that I am God. So conventional wisdom tells you to thrive. It tells you to go out there and do things. And there's an element and season in your life where thriving is essential. But then it gets to a point where if you're starting to get arrogant and you're starting to think that your striving and your ambition is the one that's causing you to prosper and excel, then that's when it's time to cease from thriving. And God, the same thing that God uses to bless you, it will be a season where that doesn't work. And God is saying, it's time for you to be still. So how do you be still today? Man, if I knew, I would do it myself. It's going to be hard for me to be still. So we'll continue to navigate through this and try to figure this out. But I know that there's the element of me being still that's essential to my growth, my development, and my way of life from this point forward. And there's an element of uncertainty out there as well. Like, what does this stillness give me? Am I wasting time? But it comes down to it. It's like trusting in the Lord. Yeah. If you're not able to be still, then, how much trust do you have in the Lord? And that's more than an indictment on me than it is on God. So think about that. So make it a great day, young kings. Go do great things, or just be still.